Hello and welcome to Adobe APAC Live. My name's Jason Grant. I'm one of Adobe Solution Consultants, and I'm very fortunate today to be here with Ian Haigh, an old school designer who is also now in writing, directing, and you own your own company, Ketchup. Is that correct?
Ketchup is the name of the company, yes. I was hungry, presumably, when I came up with that name, but it served me well for the last almost 10 years.
Wonderful. And your experience, it goes, you started basically in Wellington, New Zealand. You've moved over to London as well. And
Amsterdam, yeah. So I started in pre-press, which I'm sure people probably don't even know what that is nowadays, but it was basically we were shooting bromides on big cameras, and it was making the plates, making the film for the printers to print stuff. The smell, it was a heady time. It was at the kind of transition between analog to digital, and we have a lot of old school people sort of saying, "Oh, you're never going to get good images from a computer." And apparently now you can.
Things have changed.
Yeah.
Do you want to give us a little bit of a background in Ketchup and what you currently do today?
Yeah. So Ketchup, my career has basically started from the pre-press thing, went into design and doing artwork, and I became really enamored with animation with computers, programming. I've always been a bit of a computer nerd, and in Ketchup terms, I still use After Effects a lot, but I've been gradually doing more Adobe Premiere, editing, filming, and a mixture of all of those, and increasingly more writing and directing as well.
Wow. Yeah, that's a really good experience. I think we've got some of your show reel in the background, but do you want to maybe give us a quick overview of some of the recent projects you've done? I think we're going to touch on the Opera Australia.
The Opera Australia one, that
was
was super fun. Yeah. So I've got a bit of a demonstration of some of the titles that I did for Opera Australia. That involved writing and directing 20 short pieces that were showing off some of the talent and experience of the opera team, some of the behind the scenes things that people don't necessarily know about. In the background, you can see some of the stuff that I've filmed over the years for various. A lot of it's corporate, some of it's arts based, a lot of it's through design and advertising. So there's animation, film, and editing, basically.
Oh, wonderful. I just want to also quickly highlight today, please feel free to ask Ian as many questions as you want. He says the harder the better. So shoot them through him. You just need to log in with your Adobe ID. I think it takes a total of 4 seconds to do, maybe a bit longer, but the efficiencies that you're going to show us a bit later will actually compensate for that time.
We're going to save about 4 seconds with all of the efficiency gains that we make today. So get those questions coming.
Yeah. So we might as well jump straight into what you do, what we're going to go through today. But so you're going to go through After Effects, and we're actually going to touch on 4 different examples that you're going to show us. And the first one is wavy dots.
It's a little project I like to call wavy dots.
So there we are.
So all of these are basically taken from real world projects that I've done quite recently. I've just taken one aspect out of those projects and then broken them down into a really simple project that I think will show off a few of the some of the techniques that I've been banging on about over the years. Yeah,
because I think we've especially highlighting with this project, if you didn't use some of the extensions and the scripts that you are going to show us, it would actually quite, push out that time. And being a creative director, and time is money, so it sort of adds up in the end.
I'm really quite obsessed about if there's an easier way or a faster way or an automatic way to do something, then I'm all for it, because computers are really good at doing repetitive things without making mistakes. People aren't. And so if you can set it up in any way that's going to make things much more faster, it's going to be more accurate, it's going to save you time, then I think it's great. And the kind of user that I've got in mind today is someone who's maybe used After Effects a little bit. They know how to find their way around. They've done some animations perhaps. And one of the great things about After Effects, if not the greatest thing I think, is other than it's very powerful out of the box, it's also very extendable. So you can write your own scripts, or you can download third-party scripts. You can write expressions. You can basically wire it up in a million different ways and get a lot of productivity out of it.
That's wonderful. Quick shout out. We got King Seng that says hello from Wellington. So we got a local. Also got a hello from Lisa and Daniel. So please feel free, chat away. So we'll acknowledge you and also answer anything that you may have. We're wavy dots. How long did it take you to actually get to, say, as proficient as you were? So you sort of touched on that you're quite a natural, or you have that
Oh, I just have
ability to.
From when I was a kid, I was just drawn to computers and programming, actually.
Yes.
So I'm not a programmer, but I do use programming extensively, and
Okay.
that was really from as soon as I sort of got my hands on a computer. And in those days, it was like the Commodore 64. That's how old I am. Was basically my computer of choice, and as soon as you turned it on, it was ready to be programmed. And so for me, that's always been part of the allure. And as a productivity nerd as well, the fact that I can use programming to make these things, to extend it and make things more efficient is actually really attractive.
Wonderful. Okay. Did you want to show me?
Okay, so wavy dots. So basically, one of the things what I was thinking about when I was setting this one up was, as a motion graphics artist, or whether you're doing titles or anything, you often get provided artwork from a designer.
Yes.
And that comes in a usually Illustrator or InDesign format. So I've just kind of mocked up a very, very simple kind of actually, in this instance, what I'm going to do.
You got a nice little trick too with that randomizing.
That's right. So
this is my highlight.
We'll start from scratch. So this is a 1080 Illustrator file, and I'm just going to put a dot in there. I'm going to use my Adobe library where I've got set up the my Ketchup brand colors there, so they're always consistent and readily available.
Opens up in all products.
That's right, consistent across all products. And I'm just going to duplicate a few of these dots now, not looking particularly random. And there's this nice little feature in Illustrator. So if you go to step and repeat, often I don't know where the menu item is. I just use the keyboard shortcut, Command Option Shift D. Sorry, not step and repeat, transform each. Down here is a little button called random, which you might miss. And it just basically means that when you are playing with these values here, it's going to randomize them within those parameters. So I could type in 200 pixels.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of tricks that you actually do show where you sort of show that you can still manualize a lot of these processes, and and I am also just as guilty as the next person to do this. But I think you have some wonderful sort of efficiencies in how you do work. So,
there's a couple of little neat tricks that I'd like to highlight as well. There's just along the way, so I'll make a point of calling those out. So that's some random dots. I've got them already set up over here, virtually identical, but we're going to use these ones. So I'm just going to make a new composition. They've already been imported. And the first tool, the third-party tool, so a lot of these scripts are available on various websites.
Yes.
They are, some of them you have to pay money, but a lot of them are actually just pay whatever you want.
Okay.
Some of them are free, and some of them you can just decide how valuable they're going to be to you. And so if you want to pay $0, then you can pay $0.
Yep.
So
at least pay for a cup of coffee.
Yeah, exactly. Buy the developer a cup of coffee. So the first one that I'd like to demonstrate is called Explode Shape Layers, which, other than being a dramatic sounding name, is very helpful. It's made by a guy called Zach Lovett. And so with my Illustrator file in there, back in the day, I would have probably had to put every single one of those dots on a separate layer.
Yes.
But now I can just click that button, convert small to shape layers, and then click this button, that's the explode one, and it'll just spit them all onto their own individual.
Yeah, I think this is a really good sort of tool, because basically when you do animate, you can animate elements separately or individually. So this one, if you weren't going to do that layer option, which as I sort of alluded to before, I'm quite sort of old school in the way I do it. I wasn't very proficient with my layers.
Yeah.
Just quietly.
Your secret's safe with us.
Yes.
So this is actually, you're right. It's a really, really quick and easy way of, especially if you're getting provided artwork from somebody else, then you can just press a couple of buttons and you've got them all as individual shape layers that then you can play with. So now I just want to introduce expressions. Expressions are just a little bit of code that you can apply to any property on a layer in After Effects. And one of the most useful, I think, and the easiest to grasp is the wiggle.
The wiggle
expression. So that's how we're going to be moving.
Crowd favourite.
As a massive crowd pleaser, the wiggles. So just to set it as an expression, I'm just going to option click. Windows users would be alt clicking, I think, and that changes it to a little red dot there. Now, the screen is a little bit smaller than what we've been used to, so I just need to expand it. That's where I type in the expression.
That's the old tilde key, I think.
That's-
Expands
yeah.
the panel.
That's right. That's the backtick key. Basically makes whatever panel you're hovering over fill up to the whole
Yeah.
stage. And in this instance, I can just get rid of this, and then I can see my...
I'll say a quick hello to Ray in Auckland. So again, all your
Hey.
fellow compatriots have
Yeah.
tuned in, which is wonderful.
Kia ora, Ray.
And and also David was recalling the times he used to punch the cards when he used to start work.
Oh, literally punching the cards, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I never had to do that, but I have a lot of respect for
There
people
you
who
go.
did.
You're not that old.
Yeah. So with this one, so now we've set up an extension, an expression rather. I'm just going to, this little pop-up menu here, that little triangle, has got every single expression available in a nicely laid out series of pop-up menus. So what I want to do is just go to Property and Wiggle. Easy as that. Now it's put in some defaults. What we need to plug in, I'm only going to concentrate on frequency and amplitude. It's already set up defaults for the other values. Frequency is just how many times it's going to wiggle per second. So I'll just put in 1 for that. Amplitude is how far it's going to wiggle in each direction. So we'll just do something reasonably modest, 150 pixels. And now when I play that back, you can see one of these dots is wiggling all over the place.
Beautiful.
So it could just be, we could just apply that expression to all of those dots, but a better way to do it is to make a null, and then we can use that to control all of the wiggle expressions simultaneously. So to make a null, I'm just going to go Command Option Shift Y.
You're very good with your shortcut keys. I think it's a must, isn't it?
No, I do love my keyboard shortcuts, and I think with After Effects, there's a lot of keyboard shortcuts already built into it. It's worth taking the time to sort of learn some of those. But you can, even if there's a keyboard shortcut that doesn't have that's not assigned yet, then you can. There's later versions of After Effects have got this amazing keyboard shortcut editor, so you can just basically set it up to your heart's content.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah.
So now that I've made that null, I need to put a couple of effects on there. The slider control, which basically mean that you can just attach any arbitrary number to that layer, and then I'm going to extend that to all of the dots so that they're using the same values. So if I go down to expression controls here, and then slider control, it's going to appear in my effect controls. This one's going to be for frequency, so I'll just call it freak. Put 1 in there, and then I need another one for amplitude. Now, they're not wired up to anything yet. Use 150 again. So to wire it up, all I have to do is a little bit of code. I'm going to expand that window.
I'll just quickly shout out another quick hello from Trinidad. So you are very
Trinidad.
They have gotten up at the crack of dawn, well, 12:10 a.m. to actually tune in.
That's
so
amazing. Hello
to
Trinidad.
Haigh.
Hi.
I'm hoping I'm saying it right, but yeah, big. You're going international, definitely.
That's very exciting. Hi Trinidad. I bet it's warm where you are. Now, if I go to frequency, I'm just going to use the pick whip. So I want to set this frequency variable. So it's very, very minimal amount of coding just to get you into it. We can use the pick whip, which is that little squiggle, and drag it out up here to the slider that I set up before. And that types in a whole bunch of code for me. So it's basically saying I want to make this variable frequency equal to the value of that slider. You don't need to worry about all of that stuff. But using the pick whip, it'll just type it in for you.
But it's a lot more easier to manage all the individual elements that you're going to animate from here, I think.
Exactly. So I've actually put this, I can see now, that's correct. So amplitude, and so now that that's wired up to the effects, frequency and amplitude, I can copy that expression. So I'll just go copy expression only, and then select all of my dots, press paste. Now it has exactly the same expression, and when I press play, they're all going to wiggle.
Ah, wonderful.
Wavy dots.
Wavy dots, grab them.
Now the cool thing about that is, because they're all wired up to the same null, I can control all of them with the same slider. So if I want them to wiggle a lot, then they're going to wiggle a lot, assuming that that's,
Yeah.
And And you can also keyframe them. So if I say I want it to be 0 amplitude at the beginning, and I'll set a keyframe here, and then say after 1 second, I want them to be wiggling quite a lot.
So this is to ease them into the wiggle.
Yeah, exactly. Ease them into the wiggle. And the reason that this isn't, I was just wondering why that isn't working. And sharp observers will be basically spot my deliberate mistake there. I put the variables, set up the variables, but then I forgot to plug them into the wiggle expression. So if I type in amplitude here, frequency first, frequency, and then amplitude here, and then I'm going to put that.
So another thing I think it's always good to note is that the forums and the communities around this, that there's always people out there willing to help, especially like, people from Auckland at all hours of the morning, willing to help and jump in and, push your experience or your knowledge further or help you out in dilemmas like this, yes?
Yeah, that's right. There's an amazing community out there. So the Adobe forums, there's a whole bunch of places that you can go and ask for help. And you don't necessarily have to be coding to get the help as well. There's any kind of problem that you've got with After Effects, or if you're wondering if there's a better way of doing something, go and ask. And there are a whole bunch of friendly, knowledgeable people out there who will get stuck in and help you out.
Yeah, wonderful. No, that's good advice.
So now you can see that is actually working. It basically starts very little and then it gets very wiggly. And to finish off the wavy dots, I thought what would look quite nice is if they just basically keyframed in their size so that they didn't start off at the beginning. They started off invisible and then slowly got a little bit bigger. So what I'm going to do there is put in a scale keyframe at the beginning, just on one of them, and I'm going to set that to 0, and that's basically going to make this dot grow. Now I can apply that to all of the dots, and I just wanted to call out this the
colourful panel
right
colourful in the middle.
Panel. This is
hardly noticed, but yeah.
Yeah, this is called labels, and I find it just really brightens up your After Effects interface. It's a very quick way of applying labels. So, I mean, applying them like this is pretty quick, but this is a visual way of doing it. So if I just tap on that, then I can make them different layers, different labels. And if you hold down Shift and click on the layer, it's going to just select all of the layers that have that label as well. So nice little speed up there. I don't have to scroll down. I don't have to expand the timeline. I can just Shift click on that and it's going to select them all for me.
You can color code it to the Hurricanes Wellington team if you want.
I'm impressed you know the Hurricanes. Nice. So now all I have to do is copy those keyframes, Shift click that, press paste, and they're all going to scale in from 0. Nice and quick. And the finishing touch would be, right now they're all, the penultimate finishing touch, just the precursor to the finishing touch would be if I have them all sequenced, because right now they're all coming at the same time.
Yep.
You're thinking, well, you probably have to do that manually. Well, actually, there's a script for you, and this one is called Rift. Rift is extremely powerful. You can see the interface here it's pretty sophisticated. There's a lot of power there. Mm-hmm. There's a little bit of a learning curve if you want to get really under the hood. But if you just wanted to start using it to sequence layers right away, then all you need is this bit down here under Arrange.
But when you actually go and to get hold of Rift and so forth, they actually have a lot of tutorials and advice and help to actually get you up and going.
Yeah, so, most of the people who are publishing these have got a video, if not like at least a PDF or some step-by-step instruction, depending on how sophisticated it is. Mm-hmm. And I think with Rift there is like a whole video. There's so you can take a little bit of time and figure out what's going on, and it's just going to speed up your workflow.
Absolutely.
So all I have to do, I've just typed in, the default unit up here is seconds. I'm just going to override that by typing 4F, which is 4 frames. And right now, I just want it to stagger by 4 frames, which means it's just going to put 4 frames between each layer.
Okay.
So when I press the Go button, now it's just staggered them all. And as you can see, they're coming in one by one rather than all simultaneously. Wonderful. Now the real finishing touch is they're all coming in one by one.
I wonder if you can make it from left to right.
Yes, actually. Well anticipated. So if I undo where I was, this is another script from the same talented fellow, Michael Delaney, aka Fuse Pilot, Sortie, which is another massive time saver. So in this instance, it basically lets you sort your layers depending on various properties. So I'm going to choose position and then the X dimension, and it's going to be descending. So as you can see right now with the layers, they're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. When I press go, they look kind of random, but now the top layer is the leftmost layer.
Wonderful.
So now when I use Rift, I'm going to shift click on that blue to select them all. I'm going to use Rift to stagger them by 4 frames again. And as you see, they come in from left to right.
That's it. And previously, if you were going to do that, that's pretty much a manual. Is the only other way? Would you say that?
I think so. I think if you wanted to order them, you would probably have to sort of like click, move that layer, click, move that layer. So it would be quite time consuming and laborious depending on how many layers you have.
Yeah. Curious if anyone in the chat, again, please ask questions, or if you know that you can do it another way, let us all know. So we'll share it with everyone. So,
yeah. And that's one of the wonderful things about After Effects is just how many ways there are to do everything. There's no limit. Everyone's got their own techniques, and these are a few of my favorites.
So that was really good. I think now we're going to move on to something called slidey titles.
Exactly.
Really helpful way. Maybe this is something that you could use for infographics. Oh, I don't need to.
Imagine having a bunch of titles that slide in from the left. Impossible. Yes. Not with Adobe After Effects. So again, this one I've set up as an Illustrator file because this is how so many of the designs start, Illustrator or InDesign. Now, they're set up in 3 separate layers, text, boxes, and background. So I'm just going to import that whole file as a composition. Slidey titles, put that in there as a comp.
And this would break it into its layers?
Yep, so text, boxes, and background, which is great, except we want all of those to be individual elements. And in the text case, I want it to be editable text. Okay. And that's where an extremely handy plugin called Overlord.
Overlord. Oh, you must have been in a mood when you made that one, eh?
Yeah, I really got to give him credit for the branding. I think it's pretty great. So Overlord opens a portal between Illustrator and After Effects and lets you send things both ways. So in Illustrator...
I've got a quick question from Daniel. He's asking, is there any basic scripts that you would recommend for him just to get started, to hone his skills or anything like that? Is there anything you would sort of... I think towards the end we're going to touch on a couple. So
yeah, I think there are some great scripts to download for free, or one that I've written as well that you can download for free that I'd recommend that we're going to touch on. If Daniel is interested in learning how to script, then I think the forums would be a great place to start. Yep. Adobe's made a lot of documentation available. There's whole PDFs with everything you need to know. And there are people who have done tutorials on YouTube as well. But I think to learn more about the scripts and learn about where to get them, Twitter is amazing. There is a fantastic After Effects community on Twitter. But yeah, the forums is a great place to start as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Good advice.
So with Overlord, you can see that there's a palette in Illustrator. This is an extension that you find under the window menu, Overlord. And in After Effects is an identical palette. So it depends which palette you use is depending on whether you're pushing or pulling.
Okay.
And so in this instance, I'm just going to select all the text and I'm going to pull it. I'm just going to delete the text layer in here. I don't need it. And I'm going to pull from Illustrator into After Effects. And as you can see, it makes all of those text layers, they're all editable, same font, same everything, and makes them into individual layers. And they are actually all live text. So you can basically go in and
that's huge time saving. I think that is a great one.
Yep.
Strong name, strong sort of application.
A strong name, strong application, as we say in the trade. Now, with boxes, those need to be shape layers, or they need to be individual layers if we want to have those individually animated. So every time I select the type tool, it tries to pop up boxes at me. But I'll just use explode shape layers. I could use Overlord for this as well, and it would achieve the same thing. But since I've already got the Illustrator file in here and I've already got it. Basically, all I need to do is convert it to a shape layer and then explode shape layers, and it's going to make all those into individual shape layers ready for animation as well. Now, the next thing to do is one of the things that a huge speed up is After Effects lets you save presets. So presets are basically, you choose, select any kind of number of properties. So if I wanted to include in my preset, position, scale, opacity, and then I can select those. We'll go up to, I've got a keyboard shortcut for that called Save Animation Preset, and it lets you save it as a file, and then you can apply that to any number of layers.
So you can find that in the animation menu, is that correct?
I always use my keyboard shortcut, so I don't know where it is. Let's have a look here. Save animation preset. Yes, you're right. At the very top of the animation menu.
It's right in front of us all the time.
And so for this one, I basically save all of the ones that I need to use. I've got a massive folder full of presets, and I just find it as a library to help speed up. So I made a text animator using Ease and Wiz, which is the plugin that I made years and years ago. I adapted
10-year anniversary?
Yes, it celebrated 10-year anniversary not too long ago, which was very exciting. So this one basically just animates them all in using nice bit of easing, and there are no keyframes on that, so it's all just done with expressions. Come here and go away. So if I make that slightly shorter, you can see that they will, with no keyframes, nothing up my sleeves. All I have to do is press animate, and they'll just come in and go out.
That's huge.
Yeah, it's very, very handy, and that's just a preset.
It's a good workflow to actually get into, saving the presets, because we do we like to reuse what we're familiar with. So, to get that, put it in your drawer and then start with something else. So that's a great way to do it.
Yeah, and it's terrific for consistency as well. So if you need something that's always going to be exactly going from one place to another, rather than doing that every single time and having to save it, I'll often save presets in the job folder, and then I can just basically select a whole bunch of layers and apply that, and I know that they're all going to be consistent.
Beautiful.
So now we've got those. I'm just going to animate in the. Actually, first of all, what I need to do is parent the type to the boxes, and for that, Banana Face is the script that I've been sort of working on. This is its sort of world debut. I've not released it yet. I've given it to a couple of people. They say that a couple of the scripts in it are actually quite useful.
Yes.
So I feel slightly more confident that that I'm going to release it to the world one day. This one.
So we will look through ketchup.net.
I'll make a big, when it goes live, when Banana Face, I should add as well that this was my daughter coming up with that name.
Oh.
She's 7.
Oh, well, that's right. She's already creative.
I said, what should we call it? And she said, Banana Face. I don't know if she was talking to me or just answering another question, but Banana Face it is. So the first one, and this is what I want to demonstrate here, is just called Set Parents, and it's really just to show how useful scripting can be. And just for one-off, not everything is going to be like Overlord with an amazing interface. This is just one button, and all it does is it sets the parents from the first half, the top half of layers, to the second half of layers. So if I just press that, you'll see what I mean. So it's basically parented number 1 is now a child of number 8, number 2 is now a child of number 9, and so on. And that basically means that when I move the box, then the text is going to move with it.
Yeah.
So, having done this little demo before, I know that that's the wrong way, that they were in the wrong order. So when I drag that box, they're parented in the wrong order, and that's simply because these blue layers, the boxes, are in the wrong stacking order.
Okay.
So I just need to reverse them. I'm going to hold down the Shift key, select all my blue layers, and then I'm going to use Sortie again. It's just another use of this extremely helpful little tool. Change that to source, and I just want to reverse. So right now they say it's the names are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I press go, they're 7, 6, 5, 4. And you can do that by copying, by selecting them in reverse order and copying and cutting and pasting.
Yes.
But I just needed to show that Sortie is a very versatile tool for these kinds of little speed ups.
Yeah, I think the more you put all these scripts together, you can actually see a lot of the benefits in creating this and time savings.
Yeah, they all work together. Like now, my workflow, I really rely on a lot of these tools. Once you get used to them, it's difficult to imagine going back to After Effects without them.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So now when I press Set Parents, I move that box, and that's going to move with it.
Beautiful.
And so the next thing to do is basically animate the position of that box. I'm going to press P to get the position. I'm going to separate the dimensions so that I can animate the X position independently of Y, because I'm not interested in animating the Y position. I'm going to put a keyframe, say, here and here, so 30 frames. And now one little speed up that I really like is when you drag, you can drag this number here, and it's going to interactively change that value. If I hold down the Shift key, it's going to change that value really fast, much, much faster than just dragging it ordinarily. And if I hold down the Command key, again, maybe Alt on Windows, or maybe Control. Windows users will figure it out. And then I hold down the Command key, it's going to drag really, very slowly. So it's just a very fast way to sort of interact with this value. Similarly, I'll just copy those keyframes, shift-click that blue one, press paste, and now they're all going to slide in. And similarly, I can just add a bit of that rift effect on there, and now they'll slide in one by one. And one little feature of rift that I would be remiss if I didn't point out, that's only putting 4 frames in between each layer. You can also actually ease the ordering of those layers as well. So if I choose sequence, and I'll do it over a longer period of time, so maybe 2 seconds. At the moment, if I do linear, it's going to behave very similarly to stagger, but I can, if I say ease out and sign, press go, and you'll see it's actually eased the amount in between those layers, which is going to give you a different effect. I'll just do that on the text layers as well.
We got a quick question from King Sang, Wellington King Sang. She has asked about ease and whiz, and if you can allow more than one ease in effect for the same timeline. Is that possible?
On the same property, I think maybe, because certainly on the same timeline, that's no problem.
Yep.
But the more recent versions of Ease and Whiz, I've changed it so that there are up to 2 different sort of properties. So Expo out, and I just basically chose a few of the combos that I found really handy. So if I put in here a couple of keyframes, so there, and then there. So before, it would have been, if I put Ease and Whiz on there, so Expo out and Expo in, you'll sort of see that now it'll go, that's Expo out, that's Expo, the very last bit. That's the Expo in, the very last one there.
Okay.
And so you can do that, and you can actually override, I think that's what they're getting at, what the question is getting at. You can, it's a little bit nerdy, but I've put in the comments here that you can choose your own, if you need to have 2.
Oh, wow.
Those are all the different easing kinds there. And to change it from Expo out and Expo in, I could put in, just copy one of those and paste it in there, and now it's going to use that. Now, I know that should be in the interface, but it's just really about having the time to build that into the interface, and so that's something I'd like to do one day. But yeah, it's a great question, and by getting into the code a little bit, you can tweak it.
Yeah, it's a good introduction
to
making your own script one day.
Yeah, it's been a massive learning experience for me, a lot of fun. So that's slightly titles basically. So that's how it works. So using tools like there's Rift, there's Ease and Whiz on there. Oh, I don't think I did put Ease and Whiz on there.
And there was I think there was also like masking. Is that also something else that when the text drops in?
That's right. Yeah, the very final touch. So I'll just put an Ease and Whiz on here. So this is the one that's 10 years old, and it basically just lets you apply different easing types, which were I adapted them from Flash programmer, a guy called Robert Penner, who originally did them, and I brought them into After Effects. If I press apply now, you'll see that they move in nice and gently instead of just coming to an abrupt halt, which would be linear easing.
Yep.
And there's a number of different ways to do that. There's this one here called Flow, which lets you also use those similar easing types. This is actually coming back to the previous question. If you use a tool like Flow, then you can, and the graph editor, you can have all sorts of different kind of easing on one property. EasingWiz doesn't let you do that. Flow does let you do that. EasingWiz is basically pay what you want, and Flow is commercial, so there's a little bit of
difference,
pros and cons. But Flow is amazing, beautiful tool. So that's your sliding
titles. Wonderful. Okay, well, thank you for that. Okay, I just want to highlight again. Please log in just with your Adobe ID if you want to put any questions towards Ian. It only takes we've already saved them half an hour, the time. But
what are you going to do with all this free time?
So yeah, please log in. Shoot questions our way. Now we're actually going to move on to Opera Australia and a project you did with them and templates. So title templates. Do you want to give us a quick background on that?
Absolutely. So here we are. Here's how to fake laugh at your boss's lame jokes, how to pull a sickie. So Opera Australia, as I mentioned earlier in the introduction, I wrote and directed 20 short videos for them, all intended to be humorous. They all go around this similar how to do X, how to do Y kind of thing. It was a lot of fun, and they needed, obviously because there were 20 videos, we needed to do 20 variations on all of the titles. So different text and different colors. And you could obviously do all that by hand, and that would be fine. But I, being a sort of productivity nerd and thinking there's always got to be an easy way to do something, I dug through the scripts, and there was this wonderful little script called Comps from Spreadsheet. And there's a number of different ways to do this. New recent versions of After Effects have done a lot in this regard as well with motion graphics templates, essential properties in the essential graphics panel, and lets you override parameters like source text and so on, which is extremely helpful. What I like about Comps from Spreadsheet, and there's also another one which is very powerful called Templater, is that you can have the files as external sources. All of the information is an external source. So in this instance, these were all of the names of the, this is an Excel spreadsheet, and these are all of the names of the comps and the names of the titles and also the colors that I wanted to swap out. The template that I used. Yeah,
because typically a client would send forward all the names and the list of everything that they want to actually put into the title.
Yeah.
Change their mind at the... Well, they don't change their mind, do they? No, they're always right.
They definitely change their mind, yeah. No, there's a lot of mind changing going on, and that's fine. We try and build that into the process. Yeah. But I find that having a template lets you experiment with the type, size, the layout, the design, but the timing as well is crucial. And one of the goals for this project was to get the videos as short as possible. Sure. I think the shortest one was 20 seconds, the longest one was about 40 seconds. And every kind of, because everyone's attention span is so brief online, you just want to sort of eke it out as much as possible. So these titles, I really tried to get them working efficiently. And so having the template meant that I could then update the spreadsheet and basically press go, and it was going to generate 20 unique After Effects comps, all based on that, but with the parameters that I want to changed. Sure.
Yeah.
So,
and separate from the motion graphic templates that we also currently have, which lets you edit it one by one, but it doesn't let you really import data, is it?
Yeah, so my understanding is with the motion graphics templates, they are amazing when you've got a motion designer who you're giving someone a toolkit.
That's right.
You're giving someone the tools that they need to make the edits themselves. It's a little bit like when someone's got a Squarespace or something like that. Someone else has done the back end, and now someone can fill in the front end.
That's right.
So they're very, very helpful. This one is more like I had a big spreadsheet full of stuff. I just want to be able to press go and generate them all again from scratch.
Wonderful.
So in this instance, is the way that you name the files is important. So with this one, it's got a little arrow. That means it's going to be swapped out when I run the script. This one's got a greater than sign, and that's also going to be swapped out. And the title is preceded by a little hat. And that means that
That's
the
the
text,
official?
that's what I'm going to go with
Yes,
today.
please.
The little hat means that the text is going to be swapped out.
Okay.
So when I run the script, and I'll just go back again so you can sort of see, there's all the various columns. That first column means that's the comp that it's going to use as the template, Adobe Demo. The title is the bit that's going to replace the text. Comp name, when it generates the new ones, that's what it's going to call them. And then these two are basically the colors that it's going to use.
Okay.
And so when I run that script, so this is comps from spreadsheet over here, it's already all set up. When I press run comps from spreadsheet, the first thing it will ask me is, where is the file that you're asking me to look at? And I'm going to say opera titles. It reads that file, and then it also looks at the comp, and it tries to marry up the columns in the spreadsheet with the layers in the After Effects comp.
If there are, say, errors in that, does it flash or anything, or how does that? What happens if things aren't lining up?
If things aren't lining up, and
In
it
the
does,
cloud?
there can be a bit of going back and forth, I've found. But yeah, it'll flag those errors with you. It tries to be as helpful as it can.
Yep.
And then you can, as long as they're all consistently named, then it usually is pretty good.
Yeah.
And I'd be lying if I didn't say there was a bit of setting up at the beginning.
Sure.
But as always in these kinds of things, I find that the gains often make it worthwhile.
Just that habit to get into, I suppose, to actually make things better at the other end.
Yeah, I find that with programming, and because computers are so very particular, everything's got to be named properly, and it's really over the years I've become much more particular in the way that I name things. So it used to be I was guilty of having final kind of layers and file names and so on. And now I'm much more particular in the way that I name things, and it's been a big productivity saver as well.
Absolutely.
So when I press OK, it says, do you want me to make a new document or just make it in this one? I'll say no, because I just want to make it here. And it's made a folder called comps from spreadsheet. And as you can see, it's just generated those faster than I could even say it. So those are all basically, and just to prove that there's nothing suspicious going on here, if I'll just basically change one of these elements into something that is clearly not. There we go. Okay. So I changed that font because the client said I'd like to see what that looks like in
Make it more casual.
Santa Fe.
Yeah.
And so when I run comps from spreadsheet again, pick that text file again, say OK, and want it done in this document, then they will all be in Santa Fe.
It's nice.
It's a big improvement, I think. One more little thing that I wanted to mention on this one is just I find myself making a lot of single-use scripts, which is where Banana Face came from as well. Some of them I just run from the Extend Script editor, which is the scripting environment that comes with After Effects and lets you actually use scripts with After Effects, InDesign, Illustrator. Sure. And so a good example of this one was I was making these titles for Opera Australia, and as you can see when I open them up, the time scrubber is always on 0 because it's a newly generated comp. And what I want to do is basically move the time scrubber so that I can check the type is okay. I was finding myself having to sort of go through every comp and moving the time scrubber. I thought there's got to be an easier way. So I just made this little one-off script, which I thought would be a good way to just see what it looks like. This is in Extend Script Toolkit, which comes with Creative Cloud.
Yeah. I think you'll find it if you have your desktop application. You'll find it right down the bottom. So it's all included, as you said.
Yep, and it's basically ready to go straight out of the box. So you just start typing, and you can start controlling the applications externally. And so all this script does, if I go back into, did I just delete that folder? No problem. I will just regenerate that because I'm using comps from spreadsheet.
So quick.
So quick. Almost like it was deliberate. So there's comps from spreadsheet, and the time on all of those is at 0. So this little script, if I select all of those now, all it does is basically it's using a library called AE Query, which
Mm-hmm.
if anyone knows web JavaScript particularly well, they will have come across jQuery. It's a little bit similar to that. It's got a library that has some speed ups and easy ways to select things in After Effects
Mm-hmm.
and is very powerful. So all I've done here is basically it starts here. It says I want to get all of the selected comps, and then for each selected comp, I want to run this function set time. And all it's going to do is just write the name of the comp over here in the console, and it's going to set the time of that comp to 4. So when I press run, and that's done.
So would you say that's a good way to introduce yourself to script writing and that, just starting as simple as possible, and then you can build yourself up?
That's what I think is for little one-off
That
scripts
makes
like
sense.
that. Yeah, it's so much easier to and often it can just be about downloading someone else's script or expression
Yep.
and just having to play with it to just see by changing parameters to see what it does and making it useful for you as well.
Yes.
So studying other people's examples and studying other people's codes is a really, really good way to get started.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there you go. You've got all of those comps now. If I open them all up, you'll see that the time is set to 4, saving me literally seconds. So that's basically the template demo.
Beautiful. Okay, so next we're going to move on to JSON. JSON. And yeah, so you have some wonderful examples of using JSON and speed reading.
Yes. So the other day, a friend of mine he'd written an article for a smart company, and he wanted it to get a bigger audience, and so he wanted to think about different ways that he could publish it and make it more palatable for people to read.
Yes.
And he had come across this technique, which is basically flashing up one word at a time, and it's actually really effective. It lets you sort of read it really quickly, and it's just a different way of getting into it.
Yeah.
So he said, how easy would this be to do for you in After Effects? And I thought, well, there's a challenge, and if it works, then I'll give the Adobe live streaming audience a demo.
Oh, please do.
And it works. So with Jason is other than my co-host today, it's basically a way of shuttling data around. So it stands for JavaScript Object Notation, as everyone knows. And the latest version of After Effects let you import a JSON file straight into the project and then start using it. So a JSON file, in this instance, it can have all sorts of data. You can control things, color, size, position, whatever you need to control. In this instance, all I did was set up, open it up for you. It looks like this.
And there's a lot of good converters also online that you can actually do for JSON.
Yeah.
Which is always good to, when you want to pull all that data and information, to convert it into something that we see in front of us.
Yeah. It's become a very ubiquitous format, and it's super helpful for basically storing data or moving it around. A lot of websites will publish a feed of JSON data that you can just request it for, and there's a lot of tools, like you say, for massaging it and getting it into the format that you want.
Wonderful.
So this is it's literally a text file, and every single word in the article, I've just put it into quotes with a little comma, which in JavaScript terms is an array.
Yep.
So
again, I'll just quickly highlight, anyone want to ask questions, ask him why he's got banana up on his screen, please send them through. Ian's more than happy to answer away.
So keyboard shortcuts there for you. So banana is just my go-to word when I need a word to type in. It's just kind of, it may have come from Banana Face. Again, it may have been because I was hungry. Who knows? But anyway, this is the base for this speed read demonstration. So there's the JSON file. I've already imported it here. The text document, as you can see, there's no expression applied yet. So the first thing to do is I'm just going to, again, option click on the source on the stopwatch here, which adds an expression. I'm going to then make a new variable. I call it JSON. It's the French way of saying it. And then I'm going to use the pick whip to select the file in there. And that's not quite enough. You do need to say that you want to work with the source data property of the JSON object.
Because I think it was a JSON now is getting used quite heavily with data-driven graphics, animations, and so forth. So it's going to be an area that definitely you should play with and get your feet wet. I would say.
Absolutely. And for this is obviously a trivial example. I mean, let's face it, they're all trivial examples, but this one is particularly good, I think, because if you look at the text file that I've got here, there's just counting those little brackets, 470 individual words, which if you wanted to put them in one After Effects comp, there's 470 individual layers, which begins to sort of get a little bit unwieldy. I mean, this is one article, it's not even particularly long. If you needed it to be a lot longer, then you're starting to get into the thousands of layers, and that's very difficult to navigate. So as you'll see, hopefully, this is going to be a much easier way to do it. So I've got the JSON file, and just to check that it's reading it correctly and how I expect, I'll just type in a random. I'm just using an array notation to pick out a word there. Muscle.
Okay. Yep.
And
that's purely just to make sure the data is actually being read.
Yeah,
is that correct?
Exactly, to make sure that the connection is there, the data is acting how I want. And the next thing to do is basically what I want to do is make an index and tie it to the timeline.
Yep.
So obviously as the playhead moves, the time is changing. So what I want to do is make that into a number that then I can pull out the relevant element from that array. So it sounds more complicated than it is. All I have to do is I'm just going to put in a duration so that I can change the speed with which the words come up if I need to. And then we'll say my index equals time divided by duration.
Point 2 is the speed read in time per word?
That's the theory, yeah.
Okay.
So that'll be on screen for, we can have a bit of a play around with that and see what we like. And then with the next thing to do, so I've got the index there. And this is actually a good time. I could just say my index because that's just going to show me, is it working?
Wow.
Now I can see that it is working. It's basically just kind of the result of that. If I just had time in there, for example, then it would just show me the current time. But because I've divided by 0.2, then it's given me this data. So it's sort of slowed it down. And now I can just use that as the...
that in itself is also a good thing.
Right.
Just the little time counter is always a good thing to have.
Yeah, it's a very handy. And then if you've got, if you need to obviously that's going to, this sort of ties in with the next thing that I need to do on the script. If I had the time there, then you can see that it's all fractions. It's basically, hundredths of a second. But there's another JavaScript utility, the math library, has a whole bunch of helpful functions. This one, math floor, just means it's going to round it down to the nearest integer or whole number. So when I run that, I'm going to get seconds. And that's helpful in this instance because what I want to do is use the JSON object that I imported before with the index that I've created. When I press that, it's not really working properly. It keeps saying banana, which is appealing, but not necessarily what we want. So I'm going to use the math floor on this one to round it down so that we get an integer, and then it's going to pull out the right word from the array.
There we go.
So pretty quick. You can obviously tweak that. You could even keyframe that if you put it on a slider property. So put it on 0.1, it's going to be much faster. And if I put it on, say, 0.4, it's going to be much slower. And to do that, I can't think of a more efficient or easier way to do this. If you tried to do it with individual layers, it would be a real graft.
It would be huge. And so, and the beauty here is once you've set up all the animations now, the JSON, you can re-import, you can pull it in, and then changes happen.
Absolutely. So it's a live link. So if I go in here, instead of let's not use banana, let's use pineapple. And if I go here to the very first, you can see I didn't even have to do anything. It's already just immediately updated. So that way you can separate the After Effects component from somebody else who's basically responsible for the data, whether it's a spreadsheet or whether it's just a text file, JSON file. They can be editing that, and you don't have to worry about it. So you've got that nice delineation.
That's really good. I think that's a wonderful tip, and absolutely moving forward, I think this is going to be something that we're going to be seeing more of and definitely using. So yeah, that was wonderful. Thank you for them 4 great insights
My
into
pleasure, yeah.
your workflows. Last chance for questions. We still have, but I think before we move on, I just wanted to ask if there were any particular tips you would like to share with our audience from around the world.
Well, for me, I think it's one of the things that I really enjoy is just exploring. I just love software. I love exploring software and finding out what it can do. And one of the ways that I found that is extremely a quicker way to learn is just throwing yourself in the deep end. I think if you've got a real project, whether it's from a client project, you've got to make sure you've got enough time before you start throwing yourself in the deep end on a real client project. But if there's a way of doing something that you think there's got to be a better way or a more efficient way, then there probably is. And I find that by having a real project and a real goal that I'm working towards, that's the best way to learn. Doing tutorials is great, and it's going to give you all sorts of techniques that you don't know. But if it's your own project and you're solving your own problems, being able to kick the tires and get under the hood, being able to get onto the forums, all the resources out there. There's so many helpful people out there. There's lots of great YouTube videos. There are tutorials. There's this one. Rewatch this one. And I think it's that curiosity and not being afraid to ask questions.
It's almost made to learn sort of stuff that, if you do push yourself and give yourself a project, as soon as money's tied to a project, that makes you really want to learn. So, no, really good advice, and thank you. I thought we still got a couple more minutes, so more than happy to maybe explore some of the things that Ketchup are currently doing, and basically where do you sort of see yourself going forward, and what areas do you want to actually play with?
Yeah, other than Banana Face, which is obviously probably the main project that I've been concentrating on. Now, for me, it's always I just love computers, and I think I'm always going to be tethered to a computer. There's never going to be that far away from one. And the programming, I think I just find that whole world really fascinating. The fact that now virtually every kind of major program has got some sort of API is super exciting. I've been playing around a lot with APIs on the web as well. So I've got little speed ups for Harvest, which I use as a timesheet, and there's also Vimeo, the web sharing platform, has got an incredible API. So I've been doing that kind of that I use in my everyday kind of work and so on. But personally, I've also been doing more writing and more directing as well, which I love. But as I say, I don't think I'm going to be too far away from the computer.
I think the opera videos that they're great to watch, and they'll come up soon. So we look forward to it.
Yeah,
I think they're on Facebook. Is that right?
They're on the Opera Australia Facebook channel. Go and check it out. They're very, very brief.
They are fun.
Yeah, they're fun.
Yeah, I read the one around hair loss. So I don't know why gravitated to that one.
They're quite snackable. They were a lot of fun. So I'd like to sort of do more projects along those lines. I love getting in right at the very beginning and getting stuck into the creative process.
Wonderful. Yeah. I think the efficiencies you did show, it just takes, these are things that most people do manually. So it's really good just to see a better way and a quicker way to do it. It frees you up to do better things up. To put your focus on different other elements.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, as you can see, as I mentioned at the beginning, the person that I've got in mind for today was really like someone who knows some of After Effects, but might not know that there's this whole ecosystem out there. And they're not particularly expensive. A lot of the tools are free, and you can just put them into your workflow right away, and you can get huge speed ups, and actually it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it takes After Effects to a new level. Okay, I'd love to say thank you very much, Ian from Ketchup. Really appreciate your time, and really appreciate you taking us through After Effects and everything that you do. Thank you again. Just want a quick shout out. Next 2 weeks, we will be featuring Joy Lee here, so please tune in again. Appreciate your time. I think that's everything, and thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And if anyone wants to get in touch, it's Ian Haigh, that's IANHAIGH on Twitter. Hit me up if you've got any questions. If you've got any comments, then I'd love to hear from you. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you.